This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is the Journey Step-by-Step Christian Podcast, and I'm your host, Karen Beach. It's almost Easter, and while there are a ton of things that we associate with Easter that have absolutely nothing to do with the holiday, i.e. rabbits and eggs, there's one tradition that I really kind of enjoy, and that's every Saturday night before Easter, we're treated to the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston. Granted, there's no actual woman in the real story, the biblical story, that says, Moses, Moses, Moses. But it's a pretty decent movie, even though the special effects do not hold up in the 21st century. But we have the 10 Commandments, which is a central component of the Old Testament. When we're in the New Testament, however, Jesus gives 2 commandments. And in those 2 commandments, he summed up all of the other commandments. They can be found in all 4 of the Gospels. In 3 of them, Matthew chapter 22, verses 35 through 40, Mark 12, 28 through 34, and Luke 10:27. He says, in response to a Pharisee who was trying to trip him up, he says, and I'm going to quote from Luke, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets. And if you think about it, he's right. Do not commit adultery. Do not murder. All of the other commandments deal with loving your neighbor. But it's written a little bit differently in John. In John 13, 34 and 35, John focuses on that second commandment. He says, just as I, and that's Jesus, so we're talking God, just as I have loved you, you are to love one another. By this, loving one another, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. He said, love one another. Period. End of statement. And here's what he didn't say. He didn't say, love one another if they share your faith. Love one another if they have the same skin tone or racial background. Love one another if their W-2 shows a similar or higher income. Love one another if they are members of your political party or they support the same candidate or the same causes. Love one another if they make the same choices that you would make. Love one another if you would judge them as worthy. No, he just said love one another. And are we doing that? In this divisive, hostile, intolerant America of 2020, I would say that the answer is a resounding no. Maybe it's better in Europe, Asia, or Africa. I don't know. I live here, and here is what I experience daily. As a Christian, I'm supposed to love other Christians and others that aren't Christian. But wait a minute. Let's talk about the Christians first. You mean I'm supposed to love those from other denominations? Jehovah's Witnesses? Catholics? Seventh-day Adventists? Seriously? I'm supposed to love them too? Okay, but what about the Muslims and the Jews? Jesus said, love one another, period. That means everybody. I'm not saying that we have to accept everyone's beliefs. But if your goal is to convert people and win them over to your beliefs, when is the last time someone won you over by yelling at you, calling you names, and talking down to you? We're supposed to win souls for Christ by doing that? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit down and talk to someone who has such disdain and animosity towards me. Where's the love? Now, if someone sees me as loving and helpful, and I state what I believe calmly and with sincerity, I can get through to more people. Unfortunately, those of us who do what the Lord commanded us to do, we don't get the press. The Westboro Baptist churches of the world who spew hate and intolerance, those are the ones that get the press. The televangelists who tell people, no, don't pay your bills, pay me. They get on the news. Those who need a congregation to pay for their state-of-the-art plane, those get the press. And as a result, the church suffers. At this rate, we're losing about 2.5 million people per year. And people are experiencing the opposite of love, intolerance, greed, and animosity from the church of all places. Atheists and people who are hostile to the church are quick to point out these examples. Love is what brings people to the church, but we're not showing it in many cases. Now, watching the news is hard for me. As a journalism major and someone who worked in media for a few years, I am well aware of the saying, if it leads, it bleeds. Murder and crime are the first things you hear about on the news, and that's often followed by political news, which today is saturated with negativity and intolerance of anybody else's point of view. But did you know, and I thought this was a very interesting fact, that Democratic presidential candidate and former Vice President Joe Biden was one of the people who eulogized Republican Senator and former presidential candidate John McCain. Although the two represented different parties with different philosophies, they managed to maintain a friendship built on trust and respect. Biden started his speech by saying, "My name's Joe Biden, and I'm a Democrat, and I loved John McCain." Through his eulogy, he also said, it's all about trust. I trusted John with my life, and I would like to think that he would trust me with his. Sadly, I don't think that type of friendship is possible anymore. People, regular people like you and me, are ending friendships over politics. And the only thing more upsetting to me than the news is social media. I have friends on both sides of the spectrum. I myself am firmly in the middle as an independent. But I have friends whose only purpose on social media is to post news about what's good about their side and what's bad about the other side, even when that news comes from a satire site, a joke site. Both sides want to take the high road. And if you talk to people from either side, they will say that they are on the high road. But from the outside looking in, I would say both sides are covered in the mud that comes from wallowing in the dirt. And recently I was on a site reading an article. It was a news site, and I was reading an article, and I commented. When I comment, I'm not rude, I'm not condescending, I'm not hateful. I simply state my point of view in as neutral as possible language. And several people responded to my comment, and we were having a pretty civil discourse until one person who disagreed with me came in with guns blazing, full of hostility and rudeness. He ended his comment by calling me, an African American, a porch monkey. I didn't even bother to respond. But it shows, again, the profound lack of love. It boggles my mind that so many racists call themselves Christian. What Bible are they reading? I go to a multicultural church, and we often say that our congregation is what heaven will look like. All races, all kinds of people who share one thing in common, and that's their love of God. The 2 commandments that Jesus gave focus on love. God is love. He wants us to show love. We are to love Him and show love to one another. Acting out of anger is not love. Name-calling and bullying is not love. Making negative assumptions about people is not love. So what is love? And how do we show it? 1 Corinthians 13 is often referred to as the love chapter, and within it, it gives a very comprehensive definition of love. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8 says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. I think people need to read this daily. Love is patient. Love is kind. And more than a feeling, kindness is an act. It is expressed in what we do. What do? It can be as simple and quick as a smile or a hug or a well-meaning good morning. It can be shown through listening to someone who desperately needs to be heard. It's done through feeding the homeless, giving clothes, shoes, coats you're not wearing to someone who needs them. It could be caring for relatives who need a helping hand or who have fallen on hard times. Love does not boast and is not proud. Boasting is pride in your accomplishments, achievements, possessions, and abilities. It is the opposite of humility. And humility is talked about constantly throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. Proverbs 11:2 says, when pride comes, okay, that's when boasting comes, then comes disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom. Ephesians 4:2 says, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing one another in love. Humility comes with gentleness and patience. Again, there are many verses about humility throughout the Bible, and often it's juxtaposed with its opposite, which is pride and boastfulness. Jesus is the Son of God. So if anyone had the right to be boastful and full of pride, it was him. Yet he was humble. He was gentle. He was kind. He built others up and did not dishonor them. He didn't delight in evil. He rejoiced in the truth. He protects us. He trusts us. He has hope in us. He perseveres and never fails. Basically, Jesus is love. And if we're to follow him, we need to embody that same love in our own lives. Look at it this way. You've probably, or maybe you know someone who's given or received blood. If you give blood, you have no idea whose blood, your blood, is going to help. If you receive blood, you have no idea whose blood is helping you live. Why? Because we're all the same. No matter your faith, your race, your political party, your gender, or anything else, we're all the same. We can give blood to people of a different faith, race, party, gender, and you can receive blood from people from a different faith, race, political party, or gender. We're the same. We are all God's amazing creations. Not everyone will agree with you. Heck, not everyone will like you, and that's okay. Your job isn't to like everyone. Your job is different. Your job is to love everyone. No matter what the question is, the answer is compassion, kindness, and empathy. The answer is compassion, kindness, and empathy. I have to say it twice. No matter the question, those three things are the answer. And those three things, kindness, compassion, empathy, humility, we throw in a fourth. These are the very things that our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, stood for. Compassion for those who are less fortunate, kindness for everyone, and empathy for those holding another point of view. And then there's humility, because we're never boasting about ourselves, because everything we have comes from the Lord. Loving one another. Jesus gave 2 commandments, and both of them deal with love. So are we loving one another, and what can we do to love one another? So I'm going to give you an assignment for this week. My assignment to you is to love someone. And not someone that you already love, but someone who holds a different view from you, someone who sees things differently. They might be from another religion, another faith, another race, but show them love. Get in the habit of doing that. So that's your assignment for this week. Show love to someone that you might not have shown love to before, and start making that a habit. And that's the only way things can change. And I desperately think things need to change in our country. But that only starts one person at a time and one act at a time. So your assignment, love someone. If I'm going to give you a second assignment, it's to join the Journey Step-by-Step Facebook group. We have a group. We've got great discussions. We've got great motivational, inspirational quotes and memes, and even a little bit of fun. Good, clean fun. So that's at the Journey Step-by-Step Facebook group. And with that, you've got your assignment. or assignments if you want to take the second one seriously, I'm going to go ahead and end it for today. So be kind to one another and love one another. Until next time, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.